It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Well, good day to you and welcome to the program. It is County-Wide. Brad Miller with you, and we're happy to welcome into our studio today a couple of representatives from the League of Women Voters. Marion Schustrom is here, and we say hello to you.
Hello.
Good to have you here with us on this glorious and finally a sunny day. Now, we don't complain about rain in Arizona, so I'm not, but we're starting to dry out a little bit here as we get to that part of the season. Kind of fun. Liz Danbury is also in our studio today. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
Good to have the two of you here today.
Thank you.
You're both with the League of Women Voters.
Yes.
Is that a particular chapter, Verde Valley, Sedona? Do we do it that way?
Verde Valley chapter, we're both board members.
It's the Greater Verde Valley. We just changed our name
Okay.
to be more inclusive.
Well, from here on out, I'm going to say league members, but the League of Women Voters is an organization that's been around, gosh, an awfully long time.
Yes.
And advocates, well, on today's show, we're going to be talking about voter registration. A National Voter Registration Day is coming up on Tuesday, September 24th, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, the importance of voter registration and some of the things that have kind of been happening. And we're going to get, the ladies are going to give us a little bit of history. Voting Rights Act of 1965, a lot of changes in the way Americans cast their ballots, who can cast ballots and when, and those kinds of things. So we're going to kind of walk through that, and I think kind of stop at the doorstep of what's going on. Even yesterday in Arizona's own legislature, some voting issues. So it continues. And Liz is the League. Tell me a little bit about the League, if we can, to begin with. It's not all about voting and voter registration, but you do an awful lot of work toward that. Isn't that right?
Well, yeah, you said that we've been around for a while, and we're actually celebrating our 95th year right
95.
now. We encourage public, informed, and active participation in government, and we never endorse a particular candidate.
Right.
We are completely nonpartisan. We're directly involved in shaping public policy through studying important issues and using our positions to advocate for or against those issues at local, state, and even the national levels. We've been a voice for sound government practices throughout, and we place an emphasis on voting and voter registration.
I get, let me do this, I so often, Marion, I think when someone says League of Women Voters, I think about the many forums that you ladies put together, candidates forums for many of our communities, including moderating those, coming up with the questions, and a crackerjack job every single time.
Thank you.
That's my first thought. When you say League of Women Voters, that's what I think of first. Oh, the League is sponsoring another forum or doing that kind of thing. It seems like that is a terrific way to advance what Liz just told us. Playing that kind of a role in bringing everybody together, putting them in front of the public, and going from there.
Introducing the candidates and letting them get known better by the public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting behind National Voter Registration Day, again, coming up on September 24th. And we talk about it, I think, when all of us were kids in school, we would talk a little bit about, in some countries to this day, you can be killed for voting or voting the wrong way. Things like that. And it's something that I think too many of us just kind of take for granted. We look at voter turnout sometimes in elections locally, even up to nationally, we get 30 and 35% voter turnout. And you think, gosh, what a dream it would be to have 90 or 95 or beyond. And is that kind of what you want to talk about? Is the importance of voting and getting people out there, and then some of the things that have happened over the years, and maybe we'll start in 1965, sweeping legislation under President Johnson toward this issue. Liz, is that right?
Yeah, and as far as the voter registration day, this is a national campaign, and as far as we're concerned, we're going to be at Walgreens in Sedona from 9 to 4.
Okay.
We're going to be at the Cottonwood Recreation Center, hopefully from 9 to 4, 10 to 4, something like that.
Okay.
And then we have some forms available at Yavapai College, and we just did a presentation there to try to get the students all excited.
And the idea is to get folks registered.
Yes.
Okay, to vote.
Yes, and
ahead of.
in both counties, we'll have the Yavapai and the Coconino forms available.
Is there? I don't know if you'll have this at your fingertips. Is there kind of a segment demographically, say, let's say age-wise, of registration that falls off? I think of like older folks, retired folks vote. Young people sometimes don't.
Well, we have problems with the young people knowing where they're supposed to vote, because they'll go off to college in Flagstaff, and then they'll show up where they live, you know, where they're from in Sedona, and so sometimes there's a little confusion about where to vote, and then they get upset because they have to file a provisional ballot instead of a regular ballot, and they don't understand that those are still counted.
Right.
It's just that they don't go right into that little ballot box.
We've had folks from the county, from the elections department. Lynn Constable has been a guest on the show many times, and it can get confusing no matter what your age is in voting. And I don't want to dissuade anybody, but you know, we've got the early voting, and I think that's kind of one of the things that's kind of come under fire under what was happening yesterday down at the state level with folks in the Protect Your Right to Vote folks in their petition. But there's a lot of different ways to do it, and you think, well, that's great. There's more ways that I can vote. I have fewer excuses for not voting in whatever election it is, but it can kind of muddy, Marion, the waters a little bit and make it a little more cumbersome to figure out exactly, like you said, where to go. And it used to be, here's my polling place. I vote there every year at the firehouse, and it's different now, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Is on these registration drives that are coming up, can you give information, register people, but also answer those kinds of questions about early voting and where do I vote in that?
Sure.
Can you do that?
And we're going more and more towards vote by mail elections. So that's, we're getting better turnout. I don't know what the percentages are, but we're getting much better response to that.
I think if memory serves, the last time we had the gals from the county elections in, they said across the board we see mail-in voting is spiking registrations. We're getting much better numbers, or rather actual voting, registrations and voting. So that's going up. So that's terrific.
And the nice thing about these vote by mail elections is if you get to mail yours in, just go ahead and bring your ballot to your polling place, and you can just drop it in a box.
Yeah, and it works. It's all about using that privilege and becoming part of the process, and instead of complaining after the fact, become part of it ahead of, and get your guy or gal in the office that you're deciding, and become a part of it that way. Let's go ahead and take a break, and our first, and then when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about some of the history, the Voting Rights Act, and start there, and the repercussions that are being felt today from that. Marion Schustrom and Liz Danbury, the League of Women Voters, will break and be back to Countywide right after this.
Having a fire escape plan is very important to keep your family safe and together in the event of a fire. When you awake to the sound of a smoke detector and smoke in your room, don't stand straight up. Carefully roll off your bed and stay low under the smoke. If your door is shut, feel the door with the back of your hand. Slowly open the door if no heat is felt. Always stay low until you get to the outside of your home. Always have two ways out of your house and a specified meeting place somewhere outside your home. Home escape plans should be drawn up and rehearsed on a regular basis. This could be the difference between life and death if caught in a fire.
Move over, AZ. Arizona's move over law requires you to move over or slow down when you drive past any vehicle pulled over with flashing lights. Any vehicle means emergency responders, roadside assistance, law enforcement, highway crews, even stranded motorists. Ignore the law and you could pay a fine. Remember, every vehicle, every time. Move over, AZ.
Sponsored by ADOT in partnership with the Arizona Broadcasters Association and this station.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
And welcome back to the program. Again, it's Countywide, and our guest today, Liz Danbury, Marion Schustrom from the League of Women Voters I'm sorry, Verde Valley chapter?
Greater Verde Valley.
I'll get it. By the end of the show,
Yeah,
I'll get
greater.
it.
Yeah, we're trying to cover Camp Verde and
Sure.
the whole area now.
The Greater Verde Valley, just like it says. All right. Now, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, here, I'm going to say it and you tell me if I'm right, under President Johnson, in a nutshell, I think was to kind of foster minority voting, wasn't it?
Right.
To kind of help folks who maybe hadn't been part of the process very much to become part of it.
Right.
And recently, I mean, just this summer, there were some things that happened that kind of impacted that original 50-year-old legislation. Is that right?
It is.
Tell me about that.
And I would say that the worst example I saw of discrimination was having African Americans count how many beans there were, or guess how many beans there were in a jar before they could vote.
Oh my gosh.
So this is the type of legislation that we're
trying to... Tell me this happened 500 years ago or something, not recent. Seriously though, when and where did that happen?
That was in Texas, and I believe it was in the 50s.
So by the time 1965 rolled around, we talk about a lot of, President Johnson and a lot of civil legislation, civil rights legislation came through. The Voting Rights Act, I guess, is part of that.
Right.
We would say was part of that greater kind of package.
Right.
But it almost sounds like an exaggerated illustration, but it helps us kind of understand that, at the beginning of the show, we talked about other countries and the difficulty some folks have voting, and we forget that it's been difficult, especially for minority folks, in our recent past to get out. Marion, you're nodding your head. You've seen this and studied this, and
absolutely, yeah. Well, I think of what women went through just to get the vote.
Ladies,
oh my gosh.
Sure.
Yeah.
Suffrage seems quaint now.
It does.
Almost.
But they
It's
were
like,
in prison and force-fed and.
Yeah. Gosh, we could sit here all day and start kicking around the politics of all this, couldn't we? But it would be a fun conversation, I think, and the two of you are very well versed on this. But let's stick to the here and now. In June, there were some things that happened that really kind of impacted what we've all kind of grown accustomed to through the 1965 Act. What are some of the biggest points that have happened recently?
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned a basic part of the Act known as Section 4, and it provided basic protection against racial discrimination. The legislation is alleged to have helped the U.S. Department of Justice block over 700 racially discriminatory voting measures between 1982 and 2006. This act takes away racial and language minority citizen rights, basically.
It undoes, or I'm asking, I shouldn't say it as a statement, rather as a question. Does it undo some of the 1965 bill?
Before the ink was even dry on the decision, several states rushed to implement anti-voter laws that are going to negatively affect all voters, not just minorities.
Can I get, and I can't ask you, and wouldn't ask anyone to try to get in the heads of politicians, but what is the arguments pro and con for this? I'm not familiar with the folks who have approved that. Say, well, we're making these changes. It's a good thing because, and you've kind of illustrated it's a bad thing because. But what's the pro side?
To give an example, right away, Texas went and implemented redistricting maps so that they could gerrymander in their favor.
Right. Well, in our state, there's an argument.
And we have a lot of that here, too.
That there's lawsuits, I think, still unsettled over the legislative redistricting in Arizona. That's a fight that's still being fought. So it's not just Texas, it's here and maybe in many others. Yeah. Just yesterday, just for a moment if I can, because this is pertinent to what you're talking about today. Just yesterday, in Arizona State Capitol, House Bill 2305, this is the one, it's in the news again because the Protect Your Right to Vote folks filed petitions yesterday to try to force this issue back onto the ballot in 2014. And it's about voter rights in Arizona. House Bill 2305 was passed last year at the end of the legislative session. largely sponsored by Republican folks, many of whom say that it'll clean up the early voting rolls and kind of even the field for third-party candidates. I'm reading an Associated Press story that was in our newscast yesterday. Many Democrats, I hate to divide it that way, but that's how it's falling in our state house, are saying that it's really, it'll disenfranchise typically minority voters, low-income voters. And so we keep swimming these waters that we started, or even before 1965. But Marion, it seems to show that is it all just partisan politics, or is there really a good reason? You think, well, there's people on the voter rolls who haven't voted in 6 straight elections. We should get them off the rolls. Others say, well, no, don't, because maybe they'll want to go tomorrow and vote, and they weren't interested in the previous 6.
I believe that a lot of this is because they think that certain minorities are going to vote a certain way.
Yeah.
So if the Republicans want to get in, then they don't want minorities that are going to vote Democrat.
Sure.
So they
And vice
try,
versa.
yeah, and so they try to get rid of the minorities that are going to vote the way they think they don't want them to vote.
You know who I think I might vote for? Someone who stood up and said, I'm saying this and doing this because, but none of them do it. And I'm not picking on either side, but you know what I'm saying? Just how refreshing it would be to just say, here's what we're doing, but instead, but then you get opposition, and maybe that's the best illustration to come of it. Folks who say, well, we don't like what our elected officials are doing, and we're taking up petitions and going out and doing part of the American process is to politely revolt when something doesn't go your way and go through the system. That's what's happening in our state right now. When we talk though about voter registration, I think people that aren't registered, especially younger folks, have listened to our show so far and said, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to get into that mess." Listen to it, but just from the league's perspective and your own perspective, why is it important to become part of the process?
If you're going to complain about what happened, you need to have voted.
Yeah.
And if you haven't voted, you do not have the right to complain, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm voting for you. Short, sweet, simple, but that's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you need to educate yourself.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit, if you would. Before you cast your vote, do some study up a little bit. It can be hard.
Right.
When you've got 15 ballot issues.
Come to the League of Women Voters website. There's always going to be a wealth of information. On any election.
A lot of times.
And also we put out voter guides that will describe the pros and cons in a very nonpartisan way.
When we talk about voting candidates for office, sometimes I think that's simpler for many voters.
Right.
Because you can put a personality issue in there, if nothing else. When we start talking about issues, and gosh, would we have 11 last time in Arizona or 12?
Yeah, we always put out a guide.
It can get kind
because
of tricky.
that gets very confusing. Because sometimes the wording is sort of backwards.
Yeah, right.
Intentionally backwards.
Yeah, vote no if you love cats.
Yes.
Things like that. I know, it can get really, really kind of crazy. Ladies, let's take another short break. There's so much to say, and our time's going to be very, very short, but we'll have some kind of final messages when we come back. Liz Danbury and Marianne Schustrom out there fighting the good fight, the League of Women Voters. They want you to vote, but they want you to be informed when you do it, and they can help you with that process. We'll break and be back right after this.
Having a fire escape plan is very important to keep your family safe and together in the event of a fire. When you awake to the sound of a smoke detector and smoke in your room, don't stand straight up. Carefully roll off your bed and stay low under the smoke. If your door is shut, feel the door with the back of your hand. Slowly open the door if no heat is felt. Always stay low until you get to the outside of your home. Always have 2 ways out of your house and a specified meeting place somewhere outside your home. Home escape plans should be drawn up and rehearsed on a regular basis. This could be the difference between life and death if caught in a fire.
Move over, AZ. Arizona's move over law requires you to move over or slow down when you drive past any vehicle pulled over with flashing lights. Any vehicle means emergency responders, roadside assistance, law enforcement, highway crews, even stranded motorists. Ignore the law and you could pay a fine. Remember, every vehicle, every time. Move over, AZ.
Sponsored by ADA in partnership with the Arizona Broadcasters Association and this station.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Welcome back to the program. It is countywide. You two chatter away during our breaks here. We have so much to share that we'll have to take it up again at some point. There's a lot to talk about when we talk about this. We consider it an American birthright, but so many people don't exercise, and we're talking about voting. Local election, school board, fire district, whatever, all the way up to the White House. There's something that you want to be a part of. Like Marion said, and if you're not part of it, don't complain later on when things don't go your way. Toward that end, coming up on the 24th of September, it's National Voter Registration Day. The league will be out. If I say it wrong, tell me. But 10 to 4, you're going to be at the Walgreens in Sedona, Cottonwood Rec Center. Those same times that day, 10 to 4, helping folks get registered. Okay. Tell me what I need in terms of like ID when I come to register. If I've never registered before, what do I need to have?
Bring your driver's license, okay. Or you need 2 other forms of ID, one of which needs to show your current address, the way it appears on the voter registration list.
Okay, like a utility bill?
Yeah, the easiest 2 ways to do it would be your driver's registration and a utility bill.
Okay, something with that physical address.
Yeah.
Obviously your name.
Or a military ID or a one of the nation IDs.
Like a federal resource of some kind. Okay.
Some kind of federal.
Driver's license, okay. Also look on the league's website, just a wealth of information about a lot of things, but including this, including how to get registered. We'll give you that now. It's LWV, League of Women Voters, LWV-Sedona-VerdeValley.org. So take a look there, and all kinds of information. I'm thinking probably information about these registration dates and times to become involved, and perhaps to become involved with the league itself. I imagine membership is always welcome, and becoming a part of what this is all about. So LWV-Sedona-VerdeValley.org to find out more about this. And then Liz said we can give her phone number if you have questions about that as well, 202-2801 to find out more about getting registered. And I think it's fair to say from what I've heard from the two of you that young folks especially, 18 years old, you can vote in our country, and the younger people particularly we want to, I think, encourage to get out there. Everybody, but especially the younger folks who are just very, very busy and those kinds of things, take the time to come and become part of this process. Ladies, we're pretty much at the end of the program. Any final thoughts? Marion, you've been a sage of advice here for us today. Scold them one more time. I love that.
One more time, yeah.
I love that, but...
When I think of what the suffragettes went through to get the vote for women, I think, why are not all women voting?
Yeah.
And we really need to be. So say what you want to say, and you say it with your ballot.
Simple as that.
Yep.
It's the way we do it. It's worked pretty well so far. Ladies, I thank you so much for what you do with the league. We certainly thank you for coming in and sharing some of that with us today. Again, LWV-Sedona-VerdeValley.org is the website. It's the League of Women Voters, Marion Schustrom and Liz Danbury, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
This has been Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday as we tackle the hot topics and talk to the decision makers across Yavapai County. That's Countywide with Brad Miller and Paul David each Tuesday and Thursday on this Yavapai Broadcasting station.